A very good evening to one and all. Welcome to the Buddhist Maha Vihara's Facebook live page this evening at our Dhammadana series. This evening, we have a very special guest with us. She's actually a Therani or a Bhikkhuni from Sri Lanka. We've not had a Bhikkhuni for a long time here at the Buddhist Maha Vihara's Dhammadana series, and we're very lucky today to have with us this Bhikkhuni from Sri Lanka, and she has graciously accepted our invitation to speak this evening on a subject called OnFire, which is a quite interesting title for a topic, for a Buddhist topic. So, without wasting much time, I would now like to introduce to you Bhikkhuni Vimuththa Therani from Sri Lanka on our show this evening. Good evening, Bhikkhuni Vimuththa.
Good evening, Mr. Tilak.
Good
Therwan
evening,
Saranai.
Thiruvan Saranai. We will now read Bhikkhuni's profile and quickly start with our Dhamma sharing as soon as I finish this profile. Bhikkhuni Vimuththa Therani was born in Sri Lanka in 1977 and had an early education in Sri Lanka. She did her O levels and A levels and also had obtained a diploma in marketing and training in Sri Lanka. She started her working life in 1999, and her last job was as a training and key accounts manager at Oriflame, a multinational Swedish owned cosmetic company. After leaving working life, Bhikkhuni traveled to the Himalayas as well as spending time learning the Buddha Dhamma in Sri Lanka. She was ordained in 2016 under the tutelage of Venerable Velampitiya Vinaya Vansa Thero of the Ramayana sect, and she also has Venerable Na Uyana Arya Dhamma Thero, Venerable Rajagiriya Arya Yana Thero, and Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma Therani as her mentors. Since 2014, she has been holding many discussions on the Dhamma and hosted meditation retreats based on her knowledge and experience on Samatha and Vipassana meditation in various parts of Sri Lanka. She has also visited Australia, England, Germany, Canada, the US, Greece, Egypt, Japan, and India, and conducted Buddha Dhamma missionary work there. She is currently the head of the Aloka Udapadi Nunnery and Meditation Monastery and founder of the Aloko Udapadi Meditation Foundation Trust. She is also the author of a few books in English and Sinhala. So this is Bante's profile. I would now like to invite Bante to start this evening's sharing. Bhikkhuni, please.
Therwan Saranai to all our friends from all over the world. It is my greatest pleasure and honor to bring you the disclosure of Gautama Samma Sambuddha. So, we will start a little bit about discussing something which we think that we have got it all, but which we search for all. So, my friends, this word called all is something very significant and which is something very important. Because all that we have been doing in life connects to all. And why am I saying the word all? Because we are searching through life from one part to the other, trying to better our life in the most exclusive ways. As you must have experienced in many parts of your life, we look for more of beauty and all of beauty. We look for more of strength and all of strength. We look for more of love and all of love. We look for more of sharing and caring, and then all of the sharing and caring. And maybe even up to the extent of gaining more of knowledge and ending up looking for all of knowledge, gaining more of wisdom and ending up searching the all for wisdom. So in all aspects, we stage ourselves from one thing to the other, looking for this all concept, the concept of all in our life. And we start basically from one thing moving to the other, and we get so entangled in the word which is all. Then for some of us, we have been searching for this all in different places and in different ways. But as for my own life also, I have been searching for this same all factor and trying to achieve all in my life. I want the best of all, and I want it all to myself. So getting caught up with this basic factor of all, we forget that what we are really searching for, because we get entangled in the mess which is created by all. So first of all, I would like to take you through a Dhamma disclosure given by Lord Buddha himself. We will go through this in small parts. This is in the Kindred Sayings, volume 4, page number 10. On fire. Once the Exalted One was staying near Gaya, in Gaya head, with 1,000 brethren. Then the Exalted One said to the brethren, Brethren, the all is on fire. What all, brethren, is on fire? The I, brethren, is on fire. Objects are on fire. I consciousness is on fire. I contact is on fire. Natural stated experiences which arises owing to eye contact, that also is on fire. On fire with what? On fire with the blaze of lust, the blaze of ill will, the blaze of infatuation, the blaze of birth, the blaze of decay, death, sorrow, grief, lamentation, and despair. So I declare. So, in this sutra, friends, we are being taught about all, first of all. And I would like to explain this paragraph and then take you through the next paragraph. We go through life searching for so many things, thinking that our happiness and the calmness and the tranquility that we so long for is shifted from all the beauty, all the knowledge, all the wisdom, and all the achievements that we have in day-to-day life in a very materialistic world. But as to the disclosure, one by one, we start realizing when we go through life that all that we really needed was some peace of mind and a little bit of strength to search for this peace of mind. This small measure that we are actually searching in the wide world through different spectrums brings us to the realization, maybe one day, that all that we have been actually searching for is this happiness which is deep within us, and it is not in the outside world. But when we start to think about and hear disclosures given by so many mentors and teachers, we try to get the meaning of how we can search within ourselves. And my friends, today, this evening, I would like to share with you how we can actually search this all within ourselves, within oneself. The all is the all that we have been searching through the world. We can take a right turn and come back to ourselves and start searching this within ourselves. And to start this, we need to identify what all is within us. And we start with the basic, the I. The I and the object and the visual consciousness of this object. The consciousness of the sight. That is all that we are talking about in the first paragraph. So if we can actually take the first paragraph and think to ourselves, explore this in your own capacity, in your own time frame, how the eye is built. I'm not talking about the tissues and the veins and the blood vessels here, but I'm actually talking to you about, have you ever thought about how this eye is connected to so many things? We think that this is my eye and I am searching for something, an object, the beauty of the object which is outside. But actually, is this beauty outside in another object, or is it the way I see the object? I want you to really think about this. How we take the eye and the object which is outside, and we connect these two together with one and main thing, which is the contact of the sight. So when we have the contact of the sight, which builds into the consciousness of the sight, this consciousness makes us see things the way we want to see things. The way we want to see things is a complete different thing, my friends. At one moment in a given day, we will see something the way we want to see it, in one particular way. And then when we actually don't have it exactly the way that we want to see it, when the situation starts changing, then what happens is our mind shifts and we see the same object or the same thing in a different way. Why is that? Because the consciousness speaks to us in different ways. The sight and the consciousness of sight speaks to us in a very different way. The moment has passed, the time has passed, the hour has passed, and in our mind, we see the same object in a completely different way. Now, when we see this in a different way, three things starts happening. First, we start the blaze of fire with lust. Then we develop it and develop it and develop it, searching for the consciousness of sight, and that this consciousness of sight will bring us happiness, tranquility, and peace one day, the way we want it. That is the problem. The way we choose it and the way we want it. But the problem is, after a time period, everything that we hoped for, everything that we wished for starts to change. And when this change starts to occur, my friends, there's a deep feeling of regret within us. And then this same person or the same object, we see it in a different way. Then the second fire starts happening. The first fire was blazing with lust. The second fire is blazing now with ill will or hate. So we have ignited one fire, which was lust, and then we went and ignited another fire, which is called ill will or hate, regret, despair, and we can call it so many other names. And then through this, we ignite another fire. That is the delusion part that we always get caught into, the infatuation part, where we have this delusion thinking that one day this sight or the consciousness of sight will be exactly as to my wish and the way I want to see it. But in a different light, the situations that we go through day by day starts changing, And with time, the sight is same, but the attachment that we build for the sight keeps changing because of these three fires that we ourselves has created in our mind. And this is the Dhamma disclosure for the eye, the contact of the eye with the object, the in-between gap that we fill with the consciousness of sight. The eye remains the same, my friends. The object remains the same. But how come with time that we get so distracted? How come the same person, the same situation, or the same object, we start to have different feelings? Because of the fire which burns within us. This fire, which was lust, started burning in a different way with ill will or hate. And then it starts changing into a completely different pattern, which is delusion. Actually, delusion is the one which holds lust in one hand, and in the other hand, it holds the ill will or the hate. When you can't achieve and can't get what you really want from one end, then you start hating it, having regrets, having so many different aspects to life. So the delusion part starts with the first fire, which is lust, and the fire which burns with ill will, all because that we desire the sight or the consciousness of the sight. For an example, at this moment, if you could close your eyes and just imagine in this moment that something terrible has happened to you and you lost the consciousness of sight in this very moment. You can even do this after this Dhamma disclosure. Actually take some time and do this and see if something happens to you right now in this moment and you lose the consciousness of sight. Basically, you go blind. You can't see anymore. And nothing in this world, no medication will treat that sickness and make you see again. What would you feel? What would you really go through? This, my friends, is the attachment, the bonding that we have, the desire that we actually have for sight, for the consciousness of sight. And when we blaze the fire to have this consciousness all over again and again and again in our lives, we actually, from moment to moment, we crave for the sight or the consciousness of the sight, rather speaking. We crave and crave we crave for the sight and the consciousness of the sight. And also by craving, we actually attach another part of it, which is called grasping. Grasping the sight, grasping the consciousness of the sight. And then this starts to develop. And what starts to develop? The desire starts to develop. And when we are not finished or we haven't felt that we have really got what we needed with the craving part and the grasping part, we become the consciousness of the sight over and over and over again. This becoming leads us to life, another life that we want to see the world that we live in. The another life creates us to another attachment of sight. The sight, the attachment to sight itself was burning with lust. So it created a craving for lust. It created a grasping for lust. It created a wanting for lust. It created a becoming of lust. Then it created a life for lust. See, this is the way that we follow through the dependent origination in life after life, after life, after life. The whole sansara is created, my friends, with one thing at a time. And this one thing starts with sight. And then we can go through all our senses. We go through all our senses one at a time. In this same way, I want you to start thinking of the second phrase, which it says, the tongue is on fire. And how is the tongue on fire? We'll explore that. The tongue is on fire because taste is on fire. Now, how can we taste something? We taste something with the consciousness of taste. And what happens in between? We get attached to the desire of taste, the consciousness of taste. And then we ignite this fire within ourselves. How do we ignite the fire within ourselves? We get attached with craving for taste or the consciousness of taste. We crave for more of the same taste. Then we start grasping the taste. And then we become the taste. And then we want more and more of the same taste. This leads to life which has taste. So, my friends, again, this connects to the dependent origination, and life will form in the sansaric chakra somewhere with this. And how can we eliminate this? We'll get back to that with the Dhamma Disclosure. In the same way, you can analyze how the ear is there, the sound is there, and the consciousness of the sound is there. And how we get attached to this consciousness of sound, that we want to hear things, and we crave and desire to hear things, a particular thing, one at a time. You can go through all the senses in the same way. You can go through the nose and the smell and the consciousness of smell. And then you can go through another very important thing is body and the touch and the consciousness of touch, and how we actually get attached to the desire part of the touch, and how we form in ourselves the three fires which is ignited: the fire of lust, the fire of ill will, the fire of delusion, or the infatuation that we have towards the delusion. Creating these three fires, we crave for more and more of the same touch. And by craving for it, we start grasping for it. Then by more of grasping for it, we actually start becoming of it, wanting and desiring the touch and becoming the touch. And then later on, this leads us to only one thing: life again. A life which is needed with touch. A life which is needed with care, the touch of care. And a life that is desired with the consciousness of touch. We can touch something, but if we are not conscious of this touch, we don't feel anything. We go for the feeling, and this feeling creates desire, and this desire creates lust. The fire starts burning, and when we can't have what we really want, then the regret starts, the despair starts, the ill will starts, and then it leads to the delusion that maybe one day I can still feel the same touch. And then we crave for life after life after life in the same sansaric cycle that we have been following through. In this same manner, friends, I would like to take you through something very deep and very meaningful that we all need to go through. That is, the mind is on fire. Mind state is on fire. Mind consciousness is on fire. So I declare. What is Lord Buddha talking to us here? What this means is, friends, the mind is getting created with the fire that it seeks for. Because when we start craving for sight and the consciousness of sight, when we start craving for the sound and the consciousness of sound, when we start craving for the smell and the consciousness of smell, the taste and the consciousness of taste, the touch and the consciousness of touch, all these 5 aspects is getting created in the mind. Because consciousness means the awareness in the mind. The mind gets actually created and attached with this consciousness. So now we have a complete different picture in the mind, because we crave from one thing to the other and from another thing to the other with our own mind. Our mind is the one that tells us that you need to see, you need to identify what you see. You need to hear and you need to identify what you hear. You need to smell and you need to identify what you smell. You need to taste and you need to identify what you taste. And you need the touch and you need to identify the touch. For all of this to happen, you need the mind and you need to identify the mind. So, my friends, I want you to really look through what I'm trying to explain to you, how the mind gets created through all of these 5 aspects. And the mind is not just getting created, it looks for it, it drives for it, it desires for this, for it. For what? For the consciousness. Consciousness of being alive, consciousness of seeing, consciousness of hearing, consciousness of smelling, consciousness of tasting, consciousness of touching. And the consciousness of the mind is blazed with lust. The consciousness of the mind is blazed with ill will when it can't actually have what it really wants. And then its delusion starts to appear in a different phase, a phase that we have not seen yet, because we think all that in life, all that I really wanted was to have a better job, to have a more stabilized monetary background, to have a family, to have this, that, and the other. But the problem has always been not in the outside world, but the fires have ignited through our mind, in our mind, creating the mind and burning the mind with desire. So, my friends, according to this sutra, according to the sutra of OnFire, I want you to go through a simple exercise. In your meditation, maybe you do Anapanasati meditation, the awareness of breathing meditation. And after you have this awareness of breathing, when you come up to a certain extent, just see for yourself how the I gets created, how the objects gets created, how you seek for the visual consciousness of this, how you seek for it, how you want it. And this wanting creates the desire within you and starts to ignite the fire within you with lust for the sight and the consciousness of sight. I want you to go through in your meditations, my friends, how you get attached to the consciousness of sound and how this fire starts igniting within yourself moment to moment, moment to moment. I want you to try to understand how the mind itself creates the touch and it creates the basis for the touch, which is the body, and then how it changes automatically to the feeling of touching and the touch, and how the consciousness starts forming. The consciousness means the mind starts forming to acknowledge that you have the feeling of touch, and then you crave for this touch and you desire for this touch. And then what happens with this desire? We long for one thing after the other, and then we long for the other thing after the other, trying to make it better and better, and trying to have it all, as I spoke to you before in this discussion. We always start to think that we want all from the outside world, but this all connects to only 6 parts: the sight, consciousness of the sight, consciousness of the sound, consciousness of the smell, consciousness of the taste, consciousness of the touch, which makes it whole altogether, consciousness of the mind. So to have the consciousness of the mind is one thing, my friends, but to desire for this consciousness, to keep wanting and craving for this consciousness, to keep grasping for this consciousness, will lead us to the blazing fires, which leads from one thing to the other throughout this lifetime. Really analyze this. Throughout this lifetime, have we been looking for riches of the world, or have we just been looking for the consciousness of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mind? We have been looking for the desire in these 6 senses. And we can't even remember where we started, because the fires keep blazing so high in our lives that we do not even see that we have ignited the fire already, and we can't actually put down the fire now. Why can't we put down the fire? Is my next question. Why can't we see this? Because we keep looking for every single thing outside, and we try to put the fire on the world. We think that the world is burning, and we try to eliminate the things in the world, but the fire is not ignited in the world outside. The world, my friends, is created within you, from you, and it becomes you moment to moment. In your meditations, my friends, if you can go through this one at a time, actually this Dhamma disclosure can be explained maybe throughout 7 days if we do it as a retreat. But here on a very short time span, I'm trying to give you the message, the essence of the message, so that you can take this discussion and listen to it over and over again. Pause it and listen to this over and over, and try to practice this one at a time. Maybe you can take the eye and the consciousness of the eye and how the fire starts blazing through. Maybe you can take it for a week, or maybe 14 days or 21 days, and really look through how you get attached to this attachment of sight, or the consciousness of sight. Then next, take the next few weeks Listen to the other part of this Dhamma disclosure, where you discover sound and the attachment that you have towards the consciousness of the sound, and how the fire starts blazing through you, where you are becoming the fire. You are becoming the consciousness of sound, and you are becoming the fire which burns the consciousness. I want you, my friends, to go through this Dhamma disclosure one at a time. Even take weeks to analyze this, because if you do this, I guarantee you that you would come to the understanding of how you can see through the mind, which is the most important thing. How can you see through your mind? Because the mind travels so fast. How can we actually see through the mind? When we start to observe the awareness, when we start to realize the mind exists in this awareness through the consciousness, you will start to see a different dimension. And through this different dimension, I guarantee you, you will see the fires which burns within you. How the fire is created through the mind. The mind nourishes the fire, because mind wants to exist with the fire. The mind only exists because of the fire, because of the lust, because of the ill will, because of the delusion which is created in the mind. It actually feeds the mind. This is a little bit deep, but if you start to take it one at a time, through consciousness of the sight, the sound, the smell, the taste, and the touch, then you can analyze the part of the mind and how the mind shifts so fast to so many different things, blazing the fire all through it and blazing the fire in our life. And life gets created with this fire. And the life takes a different level from one life, creating attachment from one life. The moment to moment creation of attachment leads you to wanting another life. To what? To extent, to experience the consciousness of sight. I want another life to experience the consciousness of sound. I want another life to experience the smells of life. I want to experience the taste of life. I want to experience the touch of life. Through this, I want to experience life itself, which is created by the mind. So, my friends, this desire keeps moving from one thing to another, creating the pattern of the dependent origination. From craving, from actually, if you take it back a little bit further, from feeling to craving, craving to grasping, grasping to becoming, and becoming, which creates life itself. And when this starts happening, it just doesn't stay in one part. It always brings you sadness, suffering, and it ends up with a person always having regrets, a person always wanting from one thing to the other, because a person goes through life trying to put down the fire, to seize the fire. But the fire does not cease. Why doesn't it cease? Because we haven't addressed the main cause of the fire. The main cause of the fire is because of the attachment to lust, the attachment to ill will, and the attachment to the delusion that we so believe that our six senses will bring us one day that we really want in life. And so we travel from one life to the other and another life to the other, trying to fulfill all the desires that we have within ourselves. So, my friends, I will end this Dhamma disclosure by giving you a point of meditation, and hopefully we can screen it even later on. Uh, the words as a karma sthana for the meditation that you could do. It would be something like this if I tell you the words now. The sight, the consciousness of the sight, and the attachment towards this sight. The eye, the consciousness of the eye, and the attachment to this consciousness. The ear, the sound, and the consciousness towards the sound, and the attachment towards the sound. The nose, the smell, consciousness of the smell, and the attachment to this consciousness. The tongue, taste, the consciousness of taste, and the attachment of taste towards the taste. Body and touch, consciousness of the touch, and the attachment towards the touch. Mind and thoughts, consciousness of the thoughts, and attachment towards these thoughts, which blazes us with the fire of lust. It's burning with the fire of lust. It burns with the fires of ill will. It burns with the fire of delusion. And may these fires cease away. Letting go of the desire towards the consciousness will cease the fire of desire. So may all living beings in all different planes and planets go through this meditation and this Dhamma disclosure and discover what is all and how the fires are blazing through all, and finally seizing this fire with the detachment towards desire. Therani Saranai.
Thank you, Bhikkhuni. It was a very interesting and excellent sharing. We have a few questions that our audience has posed. I will
Yes,
put it onto the screen. I hope you can see it. Can you read it, or do you want me to read it for you?
this is fine, I can say it.
Okay.
Uh, we are suffering because of craving, hatred, and ignorance. Are of these three negative forces, which one of these the most difficult to control, and why? These three negative forces are the driving force which creates life itself. It's because that we crave for the sight and the consciousness of the sight, that if one day we don't have exactly what we want, then we actually start hating. First we start to have the ill will and the regret and the despair that we feel, and then this feeling gets built within us and it becomes hate. One day we start hating something because of this reason. That is because of the ignorance and the delusion that the mind creates, that one day we will have all our desires. So if we want to let go of the desire part, first we need to identify how this desire is created. And if we identify how this desire is created through the six senses, then it's easier to break down and see how the fire of desire starts burning within us. And then when we see to seize the fire, we need to let go of the desire itself. The second question, how could we reach that tipping point where inner peace is most motivated than catching fire outside, as everything in the world promotes fire? Exactly, everything in the world promotes fire. But if we start to seize or try to look for something to seize the fires which is created from outside the world, we will never be able to do that, my friends. Because when we when we think that we have seized the fire of wanting to eat chocolate ice cream every day, then we get attached to maybe chocolate cake. But the problem was not the chocolate ice cream or the chocolate cake. The problem has always existed with taste and the consciousness of taste. So if we are looking to eliminate everything outside the world, in the world, it will not happen. That's why Lord Buddha speaks to us in a deeper level and tells us, stop trying to get rid of chocolate cake and chocolate ice cream. Your problem actually has started within you. It's a problem of attachment and desire for the taste of chocolate. So if we can identify the desire that we actually have towards the taste and how the fire gets created, then one day we will be able to eliminate this, or we will be able to give up or identify the desire and the creation of desire and how much it brings us the sadness when we actually don't have it. And if we can give up the desire one day towards taste, then even if we have the chocolate ice cream or the chocolate cake, it really doesn't matter, because we have actually eliminated and we have actually seized the fire of lust towards taste itself. Can you give a textual evidence from the Tripitaka to the effect that the mind travels? No, we can't, because the mind travels so fast from one thing to the other and one thing to the other that it's very difficult to take the extent how the mind can travel. But what we can do is we can identify part by part how the attachment gets created in the mind. And that's what we should seize, the attachment to the mind itself. Because if we start to seek where the mind is actually traveling and how fast and to which extent, we can't get rid of our sorrows, we can't get rid of our regrets, we can't get rid of we can't basically be peaceful. So we change the side of the coin, we see through a different spectrum, a different corner, and we try to actually identify how the mind gets created in the first place. The mind is created with the desire, with the fires that we were speaking of. And if we eliminate this, bring it down, and one day completely erase the desire towards it, then we have actually seized the fires the mind is craving for. Yes, if we can have another question. Could you give an evidence that the I exists, please? What burns if it doesn't? Okay. The I exists only in the mind. Now, if I go through, actually to explain the whole of this, I would need another 1 hour. But in a short answer, the consciousness, we say the I, the object, and the visual consciousness of sight. Now, how do we know that the I is there? Actually, we know that the I is there only through the consciousness of sight. But the problem is we think that the I is there permanently, and then we can see everything exactly as we so desire it to be, which brings back to the main problem, because all this is getting created in the mind itself. But if we try to analyze the mind straight off, we will not be able to do it, because it is not possible to identify this at one shot unless you have extreme amount of prajna to do that. For someone who has that, yes, it is possible. But if it's difficult to do that, then we break it down to the 5 senses, which creates the mind. Then we go through, okay, if the I is there, how do we know that the I is there? It's because of the consciousness of sight that we think that the I is there. And where does this consciousness of the sight begins? It begins in the mind. Actually, the mind is the thing which shows us that there is an I, that there is an existence of an I. But actually, the I also exists in the mind. The object exists in the mind. It has always existed in the mind. The visual consciousness of the sight or the sight exists in the mind. The consciousness itself is the mind. Yes. Another question. The fire of sexual desire is the most difficult when we are young. How can meditation help us to put out this fire? Is suspension of sexual desire negative when we are young, as this may cause negative side effects like mental stress? Why do we crave for a sexual activity? Why do we actually crave? What do we really crave in this? What do we actually crave for? Is it the sexual activity, or is it the feeling that we get out of the sexual activity? Now, when we start analyzing this, I want you to go to the deeper level of this. The deeper level is, how do we have the feeling towards this sexual activity? How does this feeling get created in the mind? It creates to which part of the 6 senses? If you analyze through the 6 senses, you will know that the body and touch and the attachment to touch brings us to the desire of a sexual activity. So if you take it backwards and try to see through this, you will see that we think that this body needs the touch, and the touch which is brought by the feeling. And is it the body that we long for, or is it the feeling of the body that we long for, or the feeling of the touch that we long for? And why is that? Why do we actually crave for this feeling of touch? Because we have a desire within us to feel the touch. And it blazes the fire of lust, of when we can't have it, hatred or ill will, because of the delusion that we were thinking that this body needs touching, and the touch which gives us the feeling, we need the feeling to have this more and more and more. But if we can break the chain or break the fire or seize the fire that we have towards touch and the feeling of touch, then the desire starts to vanish away. And then do we have the mental stress? Why do we have the mental stress in the first place? Because we need the touch, and we are attached not to the touch, but actually to the feeling of the touch. We are actually really, really attached to the feeling of touching and what it creates in our mind. So if we are attached to the feeling of this, and if we can actually seize the feeling of this, then we are getting rid of the lust, the fire which blazes. And that seizes the mental stress that we have created within ourselves. So we actually solve all problems in all angles if we actually bring down or seize the fire. If you have another question.
No, Bhikkhuni, I think we've come to the end of today's sessions. These are all the questions that we have posted. Um, there's another question, but I think it'll take you a while to answer this. Let's see whether you want to try this question.
Okay, let's try. You referred to Paticca Samuppada. Can you explain it briefly, please? I would love to explain this, but unfortunately, this would need about minimum 8 hours. I would explain, I could try to, my friends, explain Paticca Samuppada or the dependent origination through exactly what we were discussing before. The feeling of touch. Now, when we crave for the feeling, when we have the feeling, we start craving for this touch. When we have the feeling of touch, we start craving for the touch. When we start craving for the touch, we want more and more of all of it. So when we want all of it, we start actually grasping it. When we start grasping it, what happens is the fires have already ignited. It's just blazing away with lust. And when we don't have it, ill will, and this is the delusion or the ignorance which is created. So when the grasping starts taking place, we become the touch itself. We long for the touch or the feeling of the touch. We become the feeling itself. This creation of becoming leads us to one thing, which is life for touching or the feeling of touch. This alone is the dependent origination and the creation of dependent origination. And when life takes place, with life, we have the 5 senses working for us, which creates the desire back again. And then when we don't have it, the desire gets more and more, and we want it even more and more. And then what starts to happen is this desire which is created starts to decay, because we can't really have everything that we want, because it has a decrease of feeling. It has the feeling has a descending point in it. And when we hit the descending point, we start craving for more and more. And when we really can't have all that we want, then what happens is, then it starts to burn us alive, basically. Then we try to find existence in this feeling. And when we try to find existence in this feeling, we have sorrow, we have despair, we have limitation, everything starts. And then death happens in that single moment also. And then we become the ignorance which starts the entire process again. Through the ignorance, through formations, consciousness, the mind gets created. With the creation of the mind, then we actually start to feel things, and we start to feel things through the six senses. With the six senses, the name and matter gets created. With the name and matter getting created, we have the six senses working for us. And again, with the six senses, we have the feeling, and we get attached to the feeling. And this feeling of attachment to the feeling creates craving again and grasping again. So this is dependent origination in a nutshell for you, but it has to be explained over time. But if you could go through the sutra that we were discussing, you can go through the dependent origination and how life in every moment gets created, how the becoming part gets created. Yes.
Uh, Bhikkhuni, we have one last question. I think we'll take one last question, but I think
Right.
we are deviating from today's topic. But I still don't know whether you would like to try this.
For this question, what is reborn, since Buddhists do not believe in soul? This I might not be able to explain fully because it touches a complete different dimension, but I could explain it to you in this way. It is not the soul that we're talking about. It is the consciousness which becomes the consciousness. If I tell it to you in this way, through the desire, through lust, through hate, through delusion, through the ignorance of this entire three fires, one thing gets created: becoming gets created. Becoming of the mind, becoming of the consciousness creates the mind. So for the mind to get created, we need the consciousness, and we get attached to the consciousness. The consciousness of being alive makes us want to live further and further and further. So it is actually not the soul, but the consciousness which gets attached with desire to another consciousness. It's almost like this: from one mind frame, we get attached to the next mind frame, and then we get attached to another mind frame, and we get attached to another mind frame. It's the mind which travels, and in a moment, the consciousness gets created. Becoming the consciousness keeps you alive.
Thank you, Bhikkhuni. I think we have to end this evening's Dhamma sharing. We will have to take time out because it's almost an hour. So before we end, would you kindly conduct the Anumodana for the dearly departed as well as to all the Devas who are present this evening?
Yes. May all of you have this awareness through the Dhamma discussion that we have had, through the merits that we have gained, through the opening points which we have received through this discussion, and the opportunities that we have been given in this moment. May this merit be passed on to the dearly departed and to all who are searching for the truth in life, and to all who are searching for life itself and the basis of suffering, and to acknowledge how suffering gets created, and for all who are searching to end this suffering, and to all who are seeking the path of the suffering, may the Four Noble Truths be a guiding light to you to travel through the Arya Ashtangika Marga, through the path which is being created with the steps which will lead you to prajna, to comprehend the understanding which is beyond this life, to seek the real purpose of life. May all who are with us and who have departed from us, and to all the devas, the brahmas, and all the human kinds in different planets and different planes, may all of them receive the highest blessing and the merit. May it surpasses all life forms, and may it be a golden leading light to all who search for the truth. And may all discover which is all, and may they discover how this fire is ignited, and may they discover the highest of how it can be seized. May they discover Nibbana, and may they discover that Nibbana is peace. Therani Saranai.
Thank you, Bhikkhuni. On behalf of the Committee of Management of the Buddhist Maha Vihara and also the members of the Maha Sangha, and also to the sponsors of this evening's Dhamma sharing, let me take this opportunity to thank you for taking time off from your busy schedule to be with us this evening, on this Sunday evening, and to share your knowledge with your Dhamma knowledge with us. We look forward to more sharings with you in the near future, and also to our Dhamma friends. This Friday on the 14th, we have a Dhamma sharing by Bante Sumana from Nepal, but currently based in Hong Kong. And he will talk about the last paramita, Upekka, the cultivation of equanimity, at 8:30 p.m. on Friday. So with that, we have come to this evening's sharing, and we'd like to thank each and every one of you a very good evening and a pleasant evening. Sadhu. Thank you.
Therani Saranai.